So in this lesson, we're going to be talking about variables, and here I've already built our variables folder in Go file and put in our main components for every Go. So now we're going to play with variables. First, what the heck is a variable? Well, a variable is a value. It's something you want to hold on to, right? It's a keepsake, more or less. So if we type this first example, var a, and then we say equals, and the word, then actually, you know what? We're going to do this difference. We're going to call this golang. Why? Because why not? And then we type in fmt dot our print line and put a. Okay, so we're following this example here, and we're saying, okay, I want you to print variable a. Here we define what that variable a means. So in a, remember, if you put something in between quotes, that's a string. It's a declared string. So we're saying this word golang and the letter a is the exact same thing. So if we do our go run and put in source and then variables, type variables go, we should see golang. So with this golang variable declared, we can play with this golang all we want to. We could add it into other things. We can actually, remember that a plus operator that we were playing with last time? We can actually make multiple variables and plug them in together and do things like that. So like, let's say var b, we're just going to tinker with this. And remember our is awesome phrase. Well, we can do a plus b. Now let's go run. Golang is awesome. So now you see, we're adding in, we can change things. Remember, I had to put in that space. So we took those two separate strings, we just shortened them. Now I just say a plus b. Just like in the last example, instead of golang is awesome. Now we can add them together and form a single string together. So the variables allows us to shorthand things. You can store all kinds of stuff in variables. It could be numbers, it can be various, it could be strings, it could be floating points, a number of different things you can throw into a variable. Well, in our next example here, we can also use, you'll notice here, this init. Well, Go is smart enough that if I put in var, and let's actually clean this up. Let's stick to our Go by example stuff here. Var bc int equals 1, 2. So here what we're saying is we're combining two variables into one single statement, VNRC. There we go. So here with the var b comma c init equals 1 comma 2, what this is actually going to say is it's going to print these integers, these numbers, as a string, 1 and 2. Now, why did we say init here, but not init here? Well, if we remove this init, which we definitely can do, and run this again, we're going to get the same exact, we're going to get the exact same result. No difference. So why did we have this init in here? Well, this init declares what this is. So here, this a, we can declare this as a string here. Init is the type, this is a number. Both of these are good examples. If we don't have this defined, it's going to assume, okay, this is a string or this is a integer. It's good to declare what this is, because if you leave that init out and we try and do math with this later, it's not going to be able to do math with strings. if it declares it as a string. So that's why Golang has this where we can say these are integers, these are numbers. That way you don't get confused, or it doesn't accidentally mark something in the wrong way in your program. We can also play with other strings here too. So let's keep on our example here. Var d equals true. And if we do fmt print line and then d, and then let's go ahead and do the next one. Var e int. Notice if I type right. And then fmt dot print line e. Let's go ahead and save this. So this allows us to have what I was just talking about. You know, up here we didn't have the string, but now we're saying this is definitely a string. Well, with D here, it's going to say that this is probably a Boolean because it's going to be based off of true, but it could also interpret that as a string as well. Likewise here, var e init, we didn't put any value into variable e, but what we did say is this is going to be a number. So you can declare a variable and have it empty if you want to, and then later deposit things into it. And sometimes you'll find that handy if you just need a variable that you can use later on your code, but you can go ahead and create it before you define it. But with this, you'll notice here that we got a 0. Why? Well, that 0 is basically, it's empty. So for a number value, it's always going to be 0 if it's empty. And then our last example here. So f colon equals, and then we're going to say apple, empty print line f. So with this, we're going to get the word apple, just like in our example here. And with this apple, it also tells us something. This is shorthand. That's all this means. So this is a shorthand example of declaring a variable. So these are different variables, and keep in mind, you don't have to use A, B, D, for example. You could say apple up here, and then apple here. Even though we're using the string apple, that's not going to interfere. You're just naming your variable. And you'll see that apple equals Golang. So you can use different words, and it's actually a good habit when you're naming variables to use something descriptive. And don't ever use A, B, C. That's a horrible example. Use something that makes sense, make it easy. So sometimes, like if you have what you're using that variable for is what you want to name that variable. That way it makes it clear. If you're using A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, then it makes your code next to unreadable. And you can have this as multiple words too. It doesn't have to be just a single. So you can say this is a string, right? And you know, this is considered camel case. Here's what they call. So the first letter isn't capitalized, but the rest are. You can use that as a variable. That way it defines, okay, this is a string. Now I know what that is. That's a string. And it still equals Golang. So just some good little tidbits to help you with better coding. All right, I'll see you in our next episode.